That was why the epidemic had to be stopped from spreading, why it had to be prevented before it could kill other little boys and girls. That was why we only had a single goal: eradication. For many rural or traditional Indians in the 1970s, smallpox was not a disease in the way we understand such illnesses, an infection caused by a virus or bacteria. An Indian child in some villages might be thought to be visited by a goddess. The pockmarks a sign left behind by Shitala Ma, the cooling mother, both protector and destroyer. Her annual visit, commonly occurring each spring, was both a blessing and a curse. She was personified as a fierce and wild-looking goddess, a bit like Kali the Destroyer, astride a wild donkey, carrying a winnowing fan and whip or scourge. It was the tip of her whip that caused the painful welts of smallpox. Shitala Ma determined life and death according to some mystifying calculus. But I knew that a virus, not a goddess, had killed this boy. He was killed by the same ancient disease that had felled billions of men and women, boys and girls, a plague that for 10,000 years or more had slain peasants and princes, damsels and doctors, kings and queens, emperors and dictators. A disease that, before Edward Jenner's discovery of vaccine in 1796, commonly infected nearly everyone it attacked, and killed 1 of 3 who contracted it. No amount of wealth or power could offer protection until Jenner's discovery. In the 20th century, as many as 500 million people died from smallpox, more than died in all the wars and genocides of those turbulent times combined. Smallpox was a disease so common and so ubiquitous that it is easy now to understand why it was seen as something more than just a disease, something otherworldly, not a plague of the material plane. This was true not just in India, but in countries as distinct as Japan and Nigeria, and many other parts of the world where other smallpox gods or goddesses ruled. When I looked at the dead boy in my arms, I knew he was part of a long, unbroken chain of transmission that had killed untold numbers of humans every year for thousands of years. I knew he was part of one of the longest-running epidemics of all time. What I did not yet know, as I held his tiny body, was whether this boy's death would be the final link in this chain, a tragic exclamation point punctuating the end of the terrible hold smallpox had had on human history. And I did not yet know whether the prediction of my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, would come true, that God would lift this one form of suffering from the shoulders of humanity and pull the disease of smallpox out from the roots. As I look back now, 4 decades later, I am troubled that I never discovered the boy's name, or that of his mother. Why hadn't I asked? Why have all those faces, the thousands of boys and girls with smallpox whom I saw or held or walked past, merged into a single memory, a montage of their young lives? They are no longer individuals now, but statistics and numbers and points on a graph or curve. It was not because they were brown and I was white, they were Indian and I was American, or because I had become a numb and distracted public health doctor, no longer a clinician living by the Hippocratic Oath. There were simply too many dead and dying. The numbers overwhelmed my ability to remember each of their faces and names. I do not and cannot speak for all of us, the smallpox warriors, as we have since been called. We were eager young Americans, Russians, Brits, and Swedes, and especially heroic Indians and Bangladeshis, called by the fierce urgency demanded by our deadly enemy, smallpox. The boy was one of 2,000 smallpox victims in Tatanagar, a rich industrial city in the northeastern Indian state of Bihar. Famous for its steel exports, this year the city's major export was disease, and it was exporting smallpox faster and farther than any other city in the modern era. Smallpox was everywhere, attacking everyone. Neither religion nor caste, gender nor age acted as a barrier to keep smallpox from infecting anyone who was not vaccinated.